What does Aldous Huxley and William S. Burroughs have to do with playing bass? And I'm gonna attempt to draw those links. So check this out. Bear with me, okay? I'm at the risk of divulging too much information here. My father died last week, and I thought to myself, being the musician that I am, thought to myself, what does that sound like to me? What did his passing sound like? What was the emotions that it was stirring up in me? And me and my father had a complex, to say the least, complex relationship. So I sat down on the couch and asked myself this question: what does this sound like? And this is what came out. This just came out. This line just came out. I didn't think about what I was going to play. It literally just, I played that first E minor, or that E power chord there, and the rest of it just followed. Where that came from, it was inside of me. It sounded right at the time. It felt like it expressed kind of what I was feeling in that. And so then I did what so many of us do, okay? This is what so many of us do. Me being probably the worst culprit, okay? As I start taking something purely spontaneous, and I try to analyze it. I try to make it better. I try to improve on it. And so here's where William S. Burroughs comes into the equation, okay? I'm gonna put a link here in my description to a scene in the Naked Lunch movie. There's a really cool dialogue in there. It's what they call the rewrite scene, and it always stuck with me. And you know, there's these writers are talking about, like, you know, should you edit yourself? Should you overthink things? You know, like what? And so there's an interesting dialogue there. I'll put a link in the description, because I think it's so fitting to this scenario. And it's a complicated issue, really. This idea of, like, you know, overthinking, over editing, like the stuff that just flows out of you, the stuff that just comes naturally to you. And so here's what I want to show you, is that I took that idea, that plain, unaltered, unedited idea, and thought, I'm gonna improve on it. I'm gonna tweak it. I'm gonna make it more. I'm gonna make it better. And so I ended up writing this as a variation of it. Not a variation, but a rewrite. And it goes like this. Listen to it. Sorry. I'm gonna play. So that was my rewrite of this. And I realized, after spending a good hour thinking about the voices and how they're moving and how they're, you know, there's counter motion and there's, you know, all these things. I was getting intellectual about it, and I realized I just ruined it. I just took something perfectly perfectly good and ruined it. And there's a Aldous Huxley. He coined this term called the law of reversed effort, and he basically describes it more or less as, the harder you try to do something, the more you try to intentionally do something, the worse the outcome can be. And I think this really, it applies to many situations in life, but in music, it can really apply when it comes to like understanding and being intellectual about something that is not really an intellectual endeavor. Making music and expressing emotions, sometimes it just has to happen with, sometimes trying too hard, it like misses the point. You end up clobbering something natural that just kind of came out. And maybe it came out naturally and effortlessly, and for whatever reason, we think, well, that's somehow not like good enough. We need to polish it. We need to trim the rough edges off, and we need to process it. And you probably have, found this in your own experience, when you've tried, the harder you try to convince somebody of something, the more they resist. The harder you try to relax, the more upset you become. The harder you try to hit the golf ball, the worse, the worse the shot becomes. Like, there's so many examples in life where we see this law play itself out. And I think music is it's one of these things where it's like so applicable, where we have to kind of like get out of our own way and not overthink stuff or worry about like why something works. Forget about it. Sometimes you just gotta play and let whatever is in there out, and trust our ears, and trust our habits. Whatever it is that coaxed that first line out of me, I don't know. Some might argue that, well, you were able to execute what your mind's ear was hearing. And I probably wouldn't be able to do that if I haven't spent so many hours like playing and knowing what to expect, like to be able to map what I'm hearing in my head and be able to execute it on my instrument. So there's something to be said about like trying to learn what sounds are available to you. But I think, you have to balance that with this other piece that's like, okay, well, once you've done all the work, then the artistic expression becomes more naturally and more effortlessly, because it can rely on habits that have already been created. And this makes me think of that movie, what the Karate Kid, back in, I think that was like 85 or whatever, and Mr. Miyagi has Daniel-san, sanding and painting and all that shit, right? And he gets frustrated, and it's that whole like wax on, wax off thing. It's just sort of like when he starts throwing punches at Danielson, and all of a sudden he's able to just sort of like effortlessly call up these very routine like movements that he's been executing. So it's kind of like a balancing act, but I think there's something to be said about playing and not trying too hard. It's like trying too hard to impress a girl. It's like, it's gonna backfire badly. We've all probably tried that. It just doesn't come out it just doesn't come out sounding right. It just doesn't come off right when we try too hard. And this is a hard thing to do. This is a hard thing to discipline yourself to not try so hard. Anyways, I guess I would conclude this long rant with, you know, a note for myself, like, remember not to try so hard. Remember not to overthink stuff too much. Sometimes you just let it out. You know, let those perfect imperfections just come out and be on display. Yeah. Anyways, thanks for listening.